And you guys all built, guys, I don't want to have to separate people, but like, it's already kind of stressful. Okay. And I know we got a lot to do. And like everybody, like this morning, people are freaking out and all that stuff. I don't want to have to say, listen to me like 5 times. Okay. So I will tell you that it's like this week in all my classes, I got AP test coming up, just going to be kind of serious for a little bit and we'll have some fun. My goal is to go on some field trips by the end of the year out to the Fen, do some bird watching, that kind of stuff. But I got to get through these things. Okay. All right. Now, all right. So when we started this whole unit, we were talking about phylogenetic trees. And you guys went online and made yours, and you noticed there was like a commonality between all these things. My favorite out of all of them was the wishbone on the chicken and how that related to dinosaurs. Okay, then we started talking about these kinds of trees, these pedigrees, and they're 2 different kinds of trees. The phylogenetic tree kind of started at the bottom and moved up. Okay, like from the base. This one starts at the top and moves down. Okay. In this case, we've got the man, he's the square. We've got the female, she's the circle, but we also know that those are males and females up there. Y. How do I know that this square? Yeah, X and Y, right? This is the male, X, Y. Nothing's on the Y there. This is the XX. And in this case, we were talking about color blindness. Now, just a couple quick terms, because we're going to talk about this when we talk about this bone right here and that bone down there. Is that we have 2 big letters, 2 small letters, and then we've got a big and a small letter together. What's the term where I've got 2 big together? It starts with an H. Homozygous, because homo's the same, right? Homozygous, and what's big C? Big C. Homozygous, what? Dominant, right? Because I got a big and a big. What's the opposite? It's little, right? So that's homozygous recessive. If I've got a big and a little together, that's what? Heterozygous, right? Okay, so homozygous is same, heterozygous is different. So in this case, how many people or how many kids did this family have? 3. They had 3. Okay, what about this one right here?
Marriage.
Yeah, that's the marriage, right? This is the daughter-in-law to this parents because they married the only son here, right? Okay, so when we start looking about at this stuff, we started realizing, okay, there's some patterns here. We can look at how a disease or a trait is passed on. And we know that the person is affected if we shave them in, right? Okay, you all with me at this point? Okay, good. Yeah, Oliver, let me know if there's something you're not getting since you were gone a couple of days. All right, now, okay, we talked about Chad over here. And Chad, okay, has 1 bone, 2 bones, lots of bones, and digits. Okay, not only does Chad have that, but lots of other creatures have that too. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a quick story. Okay, and it's all about this thing. Okay, so this thing, I guess I'll put the camera right here. We kind of like look up every once in a while and make sure I got this. All right, so this thing is crazy. All right, but let me tell you the actual story of what happened here. This is a rib. Okay, this is a rib of a whale, gray whale. Gray whales have 12 ribs. Now I know this came up last semester, but I don't know if I told the story. Sorry if I'm going to repeat this. Okay, so I lived in an apartment on Market Street, the corner of Market Street and 2nd Street for 14 years, and I got to know my neighbors. So kind of in Oliver's hood. Okay, we call that area Cat Town because there's a lot of stray cats around there. And for a while, the mayor of Cat Town was this woman named Cheryl. And Cheryl Wilson was, she fed the cats and they just came by all the time. So we called that area Cat Town. And in Cat Town, kind of extended up to where Oliver's house is, okay, down to Main Street, kind of by Mr. Dave's. And then we said Cat Town's ended at Walnut Street and then over on Front Street. So the kind of, that was our little neighborhood name. Now there was a lady, okay, so you guys all know where Oliver lives?
Yeah.
Okay, so Oliver lives on Market Street. Maybe I shouldn't tell people. Oliver lives on Market Street. Okay, so Oliver lives right next to Reagan Shaw. Reagan Shaw is a 7th grader. Okay, I don't know if you guys know Reagan. Okay, but Reagan lives on right next to Oliver. Okay, right across from Reagan Street is where the Carpenters live. Cliff, carpenter. So before Cliff lived there was a doctor and his wife. It was Dr. Adams. Parks was his first name, and his wife's name was Paula. And Paula was a very eccentric lady. She reminded me of Miss Havisham from Great Expectations. Kind of like she talked in like this frail voice, but she was very interesting. And like whenever Paula would call me up or ask me something, I would always like pay attention because it was always going to be weird. Okay. And so Paula calls me up and she goes, Javen, what are you doing? I go, nothing, Paula. What's going on? She goes, you must come to the home right now. And I'm like, all right. And I knew it was going to go.
Yeah, buddy.
So it wasn't like that. Trust me. Okay. So like if you've seen that house, it's got these giant doors on 3rd Street. It's on the corner of 3rd and Market. It's one of the older Victorian homes in the Victorian Village, if you will. Okay. So like these giant doors. So I knock on the door and I kid you not, I don't know if this is really true, but this is how it's always going to remain in my mind, that the doors opened automatically and Paula Adams is in this old timey flowy dress, kind of like sauntering down the hall, but almost ghost-like, floating towards me, right? And she's like, Javen, come in. And I was like, okay, all right, hi, Paula.
You know where this is?
So, it doesn't go there. Okay, so Paula's like, take a seat in the parlor, I'll be right back. And so she comes back. So she comes back and she's carrying this whale rib. And she goes, Javen, I want you to have this. And I go, Paula, I didn't know it was a whale rib. I'm like, Paula, I'm not sure what this is. She goes, it's a whale rib. Let me tell you how I acquired it. She goes, in the late 80s, we were summering in the Pacific Northwest. And I was walking along the beach and I saw a dead whale. And so I ripped out the rib with my bare hands along with its vertebra. And I buried it for the summer. I then dug the bones up and I FedExed them to my home here in North Manchester. Unfortunately, I've realized that I've done something horrible, and this whole process has been illegal. But I found a loophole, and the loophole is you. And I'm like, God, what's going on here? Okay, like, I'm not making this up. And so she goes, I found out that educational institutions can keep these bones, but it is illegal for an individual such as myself to have them. We're moving back to the Pacific Northwest and we're leaving our home here in North Manchester. And so therefore cannot take these with us legally. We want you to have them. I was like, done, taking them, man. So I left there and I brought them, into the home. Yes.
They're like vertebrae, that's huge.
Yes, it's huge. But here's the crazy thing. This is exactly the same as our vertebra. Okay, now I will tell you, okay, that okay, like it did rest up here for a long time and then somebody knocked it down. And so it used to have a piece that came up here like this. Now I will tell you this bone is really old. I know for a couple reasons. Well, Paula told me, but also if someone just gave me this bone, I knew it was old. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm like, oh, it's only no. I mean like this whale died a long time ago. Here's why, a separate story. So I'm in the Everglades with my students. We're in Key Largo. Okay, we're at a facility that rehabilitates beach dolphins and whales. It's run by this guy named Robert and his girlfriend Shelly. And we happened to be there when a bunch of whales and dolphins had beached themselves. So they have them in the facility. They try to make sure they stay alive and whatnot. And so we're talking to this guy, Robert, and this guy, Robert goes, want to go back to my apartment? And I'm like, whoa, wait. And of course I said yes. And so it was a small group that year. The last group I took, there were almost 40 of us. That group, there was only 10 of us. So we went back to his apartment and it was weird. We go into his apartment. He's like, let's go through the kitchen. And we go out in his backyard. And there's all these clotheslines hanging all over. Okay, they all are holding through this part. Okay, whale dolphin bones, and they're all dripping oil. Okay, so they were doing a study on maybe why these whales beach themselves based on the structure of the bone and then the contents of the bone. So if this whale would have died like yesterday, okay, it would be the greasiest mess right now, and it would smell really interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I'll never forget it. But this bone structure, very, very similar to ours. Okay. Why is that? This is a rib of 12. Okay. Much like our 12 ribs. Okay. And I will tell you that, and I'll show you on Carl here in a second, these ribs are exactly the same as human ribs. There's a flat end that attaches to cartilage. There's a bumpy end down here that attaches to the vertebra. Okay, so imagine how big this whale is. We've got 12 of these. Okay, so this would be lying on its back. Okay, so the whale's belly would be here. Its back would be down here, right? So 12 going this way, if this is the head, and then the vertebra would be in between. Okay, so this vertebra would be, it would actually be like this, okay? So actually it would be like this, okay? So the vertebra would rest like this, and this part, well, and I'll let you touch this rib here in a second. This, if you want to, you don't have to. Okay, this part right here, okay, everybody real quickly, take your thumb and rub your back right here, okay? Okay, what you're feeling is, well, Savannah, I should quiz you on this. Okay, what am I feeling there? What's this part of the vertebra? Yeah, give me the name. Give me the name of this one. That's tough. Yeah, you got it. Spinous process. Okay, spinous process. Okay, so what you're feeling is this part. No, that's okay. Okay, so this would poke out. You're all feeling this. That's a spinous process. Okay, this hole. What goes through this hole? What do you guess?
Spinal fluid.
Okay, your spinal fluid and your spinal cord. Okay, so you also have that in Chad right here. There's just a rod that's going through this. There's 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae. This is a thoracic vertebra here, and then 5 lumbar vertebrae. Okay, but this not only has the spinous process, which is here. Okay, I don't want to put you. Do you want? You want a quiz or no? Do you know the name of this process here? It's a tough one. Starts with a T. I'll give you that. I'll give you a hint. Goes like this. The cut. It's tough. I'm putting you on the spot. Don't worry. Transverse process. This is the vertebral frame, and this is the body. Okay. Now look on your ribs. Okay. So a lot of people don't realize this. Okay, but on Chad here. Okay, you have these 12 ribs, okay, and then you have this cartilage. You have cartilage that's attached to the bone here and the bone here. So this is your sternum, okay. This is your ribs, okay. When you let's say you're giving someone chest compressions, okay, that is someone who's having a heart attack. You may actually hear a popping sound. It's much like popping your knuckles. That's just because you're popping the cartilage in between these two bones right here. When you feel your ribs right down here at the bottom, that's not bone, folks. That's if you're feeling this right here, you're feeling cartilage right there. Your ribs are just over here on the side and the back. Notice your ribs don't even go towards your if you feel your sternum right here, right? Okay, right next to that, that's all just cartilage right there. Okay, which is pretty crazy to think about. Okay, now, yeah.
Whoa, okay, so this is the very title of my question. No, don't. I have a very messed up rib cage, and one of my ribs looks like it's sticking out.
Yeah. Do you have scoliosis? Can I ask that question?
I don't have any idea.
Wait, if you run your foot along your back,
You would have been tested for scoliosis at one point in your life, I
it could
bet.
be minor.
Yeah, that's true.
There's bumps on me on my spine, and it looks like I have a tumor. You have a tumor?
You have a tumor?
I don't want to ask you to take your shirt off, but
Do it.
He's that? Oh, Asia.
I'm a strip, guys. Pants and all.
See, you had open heart.
Think about it. One time you
Right.
had a shirt.
Say you had
It's a phantom.
Let's say.
like this.
Oh,
thank you.
No. So the So I don't know for sure, but most likely they're probably gonna cut along the side, but like, I have to
Because
do
like
some
they told me the
research.
reason I can be in wrestling is because like someone like breaks.
They may have cut like right through your sternum. I don't know for sure though.
Oh, and you had heart, did you have open heart surgery? Yeah.
It's
Sometimes
awesome.
they cut along the
Oh, whoa.
What's that?
They like put a rib spreader.
Yeah, right.
And they go in through the
I
side.
do know that. Like here on the side,
Yeah.
but she's a scar like right down the middle, right? Yeah.
They probably, like,
Yeah,
Got the
I don't know.
surgery of
Me-
Mexican
I don't know.
Ash, I don't know if they literally cut, like, I'll do some research, but like, next time you see your doctor, it would be interesting to see if it was cut right down the middle of your sternum. My guess it would be easier for the healing process to cut along the cartilage, but I don't know the answer. Yeah.
Now they can go in through the
Yeah,
side.
right,
And then-
right. Oh, yeah. go that way.
All
All right, now listen. Why are we talking about all this stuff? Is it just because I like my rib? Okay,
Yeah.
here's the thing that's fascinating. Okay, we've been talking about natural selection. We know that you have to reproduce and you have to survive. Okay, that's really how natural selection works, right? But like, why did some things die? Okay, why did some things live? We know that mutations are a key to that, and that mutations are, wait, you guys want to touch this?
I want to touch that bone, boy. Can I lick it?
Bring me that
I
bone.
know.
Look at this. I want to know if it tastes like whale. Can I lick it?
How do you know what whale tastes?
It
tastes like chicken.
You should get a few more of those ribs and just like mix it.
He's got-
I like that stupid, but I just think it's tough.
You almost just punched it.
Bro,
Oh, that was a good one, Jack. Come on.
that's a fire.
That was good.
You know what that kind of reminds me of?
I was just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now listen, here's what's crazy. If you cut this part right here, okay, there's a slight, like, little, like, divot, okay? We call that the intercostal groove, okay? And we have that too, okay? So here's the deal, okay? When we talk about these bones, okay, the fact that we have the same bone, same rib, same kind of structure, okay? A little bit bigger, shh, guys, stay with me, a little bit bigger here. We got this spinous process, we have a vertebral foramen, we have a transverse process, we have a lamina, we have a pedicle, we have a vertebral body, all the same, okay? And if we look at these vertebrae here, you can also see the spinous process, the transverse process, the vertebral body, and the vertebral foramen, as well as the flat end that attaches to the cartilage and the bumpy end that attaches to the transverse process. The vertebrae, yes.
If you cut it open, what would be inside?
Bone.
This bone right here, you can see inside the bone. So right here, this is called spongy bone. So the hard bone on the outside is called cancellous bone. This is called spongy bone. So this is where the marrow is. Okay, the hard bone is a different kind of bone. It's more of a protection, but very porous on the inside. That's a great question. And most bones have that. Now, I want to talk about this book. Okay, so I bought this book immediately after I saw what I'm going to show you, and it all had to do with this map. I was like, I went on a used bookstore website, okay, and found this book, and I got so excited because I wanted this map. All right, now, homologous structures like this, homozygous, same, homologous structures, same rib, okay, same vertebra, okay. We can look at these forms and realize that this is an evidence of evolution, but why and how, and is there, you know, a reason behind all that? Okay, here's a person, this is a ridiculous person right here, and I got A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, okay, this is kind of like what I thought somebody on Friday was gonna draw when we did like fossils, right? But you guys drew like a ground and then some stuff underneath it, right? Here's a test question for you. If I have a person that's standing on the top, and they dig down, which fossils are gonna be the oldest?
Probably the ones at the bottom.
Okay, the ones on the bottom, okay, F technically, right? This would be the oldest because that's how soil works. But sometimes, just sometimes, okay? Like things shift around, right? And so what looks like should be on the bottom is actually in the middle, okay? We can thank glaciers and also tectonic plates for that. Now, I am completely enamored, fascinated with this guy, Neil Shubin, for several different reasons, but I want to show you a couple different clips. Remember, this is the guy that came up with that idea of one bone, two bones, lots of bones and digits, okay? And this is where we left off. Again, we're not watching this whole thing, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk about a couple of these things. So if you're spaced out, if you're playing video games, doing something else, please, 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 because this completely rocked my world.
Pattern of one bone, two bones,
Okay.
little bones, fingers. Owen didn't know why creatures had that pattern. It was a mystery to him. It really took a new insight, an insight from Charles Darwin, which basically said the reason why animals have this common pattern is because at some time in the distant past, they all shared a common ancestor that had a version of this pattern too. According to Darwin, we should be able to trace the evolution of our limbs and hands by going back in time down our family tree. Starting with our primate ancestors, we see hands and limbs that look very similar to our own. Go back a bit further to the first mammals, and we find deeper similarities in the paws. And we see how paws emerged from more distant relatives. And if we go back even further, we reach our most distant four-legged ancestors. These animals, the earliest tetrapods, were among the first to have Owen's one bone, two bones, lots of bones pattern. But when we entered the underwater around 400 million years ago, instead of animals with limbs, we find prehistoric fish with fins. And that brings us to a great mystery of biology. How did we get from fish with fins to animals with arms and legs? Darwin boldly predicted that there must have been ancient animals, transitional forms that bridged this gap. But what would such an animal look like? Would it have limbs, or fins, or both? Such a creature reflects a critical step in the origin of the human hand. I set out to find one.
Okay, now listen, you got to remember that this guy it's like he's teaching anatomy in a school in Chicago, right? But he's fascinated with this whole idea of like, okay, one bone, two bones, lots of bones, digits. And so like, he's like, maybe there's some like evidence out there. So, you know, what do you do when you're not an expert that you go find somebody who is? Okay, so he found this guy and they started a friendship.
Find those things.
And I'm going to show you this part.
Well, there's a checklist we run through. We look for places in the world that have rocks of the right age. If you're interested in the origin of dinosaurs, there's one age of rock to look at. If you're interested in the origin of transitional creatures between water and land, there's another age of rock. Then you look for places in the world that have rocks of the right type, the kinds of rocks that are likely to hold fossils. We knew from previous discoveries that rocks from the Devonian era, around 360 million years old, were likely to contain early tetrapod fossils. And it turned out we had rocks of that age right here in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania, all right? So he's got this map. Now watch this.
To look for those sites, I teamed up with geologist Ted Deschler, and we've been fossil hunting buddies ever since.
We tried it through here, even going down into West Virginia. We are sort of maybe an odd couple. Neil is excitable and enthusiastic, which is wonderful. I'm enthusiastic as well, but I think maybe not quite as vociferous.
Okay, look at this. I hope that all of you at some point in your life have been out of North Manchester, but you've seen this somewhere close to us. That cut in Wabash. Okay, right? Okay, how did the cut exist? The cut exists because they blew up that to make the road, right? But if you've ever gone out west, if you've ever gone through West Virginia, Pennsylvania, this is not. This is inside a mountain, folks. Okay, so if you're ever standing on your mountain, like, I wonder what's underneath me. This is it. Now watch this. And by the way, if you were into this sort of stuff, I highly recommend Like you can literally, okay, now I would do this with your, I would do this.
Let's do some Minecraft.
I would do this with your parents, but literally you could pull over the side of the road. You could take one of these tools and this pick, you could,
Why do you own
And you could-
one? That's
for fossil hunting.
Why not,
for
bruh?
fossil hunting.
Plus,
You are
look how
such
cool,
a
look how
nerd.
cool this is.
Look how shiny it is.
You don't own one of those? Come on.
Okay.
I might tend to hunker down more and focus on recovering the material as we start to find it. And Neil might be a little bit more, okay, what's over the next horizon? What's over the next hill? Neil is on that edge, always thinking about the new place to go.
Ted and I would sit in the car with maps in one hand and
Okay,
geological
watch this
papers in the
part.
other. And we tootled through these state roads, looking at the rocks, saying, okay, what kind of rock is this again? What kind of age is it? But the problem in Pennsylvania is it's not a desert. The bedrock is not exposed to the surface. You have forests, you have grass. Turns out the best exposures of rock in the state were made for us by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, because they would dynamite. They'd expose sections of the geological record. And we eventually hit this one road cut, giant exposure. It's called Red Hill.
Oh my God.
And then we knew, okay, this is the place to hit. We had ambitions to explore the globe, but our first expedition didn't take us to an exotic desert halfway around the world.
Oh, they got all the tools.
It happened by the side of the
These
Pennsylvania
layers are
Highway.
important, right? This is geological time. This is a long time ago.
Had revisited Red Hill one time when I was not there.
I've done this to get lots of honks.
I made a phone call to
You-
us today.
You
I
don't have to go.
found something really important.
Okay, this is big. Watch this.
What did you find? He's like, I think I found a tetrapod. I said, Ted, you kidding? I mean, no, you're not gonna find a tetrapod on your second or third trip to Red Hill. This is gonna take years of work.
So I'm moving along this layer and saw beautiful little fossil bone material, chipped around it a little bit, right on this layer. And lo and behold, uncovered what turned out to be a very significant specimen. This is the shoulder girdle of an early limbed animal.
Good job, Ted.
All right, now listen. When you look at this, okay, incredibly similar to our bones, okay? So our shoulder girdles is called the scapula. We have what's called a spine, okay? And then we have an area called an acromion. We have the supraspinous and infraspinous fossa, okay? So we find this very, very important. But how do we know, like, there's no other bones with it, just this thing? Okay, remember, it is incredibly hard to make a fossil. You've got to have the right conditions, you've got to have the right time, and the soil, like this is, there's no living part of this. There's not any bone in this at all. This is all soil sediment that went into all these little tiny holes, stayed there, okay, and formed that structure. Okay, if you want to look at any of my bones, like up here, whoa, okay, like you could see,
How much?
stop, you could see how porous, okay, that is, and where all that water and sediment goes in and stays. Okay, so sometimes we just find parts like, oh yeah, well, this didn't tell me anything. Well, here's the cool thing is we can look at that and we can tell a lot about this
It was
creature.
a new species. It was a whole new kind of animal. And although we only have a shoulder girdle, it's actually a very informative part of the skeleton. It would be on the left side, the skull would go off in that direction. The animal itself would be about 1 meter long. And just from the shoulder girdle, we can learn things about how it may have held that limb. And of course, it does compare to other animals that are similar from other parts of the world, and we can use those to learn other aspects of Hynerpeton.
These early four-legged animals belong to a group I like to call the stegas.
Okay, now listen, there's this woman that was doing this like work. She's been, and once again, like these people are not like all of a sudden like, oh man, I found this and now I'm like doing this work in my basement. We got hundreds of thousands of people like that are working on this stuff together. Watch what she does though. This is amazing.
And in the middle was this very peculiar thing called Ichthyostega.
If you're into computers, by the way, and you like biology, and maybe you like animation, or maybe you like this could be your job. This is so cool.
How much?
Watch this.
Using the latest scanning techniques to build a 3D model of Ichthyostega, Jenny's trying to get a better sense of how this creature lived. She's working with animal motion expert Stephanie Pierce at London's Royal Veterinary College.
Basically, what we wanted to see was how much movement was possible at each of the limb joints and how this compared to modern animals.
They compared Ichthyostega to modern tetrapods, like salamanders, to figure out how this fossil might have moved. Using pressure pads and high-speed cameras,
Look at this. High-speed cameras, pressure pads. They're literally measuring how this thing moves.
they could measure how the limbs of modern animals work and compare this to the bones of Ichthyostega.
Ichthyostega's forelimbs could push the top half of the body off the ground, but the back end has got these paddle-like hind limbs, which are useful in water for swimming with, but on land act as stabilizers to stop the thing toppling over.
The anatomy of the bones suggested that this four-legged animal had just come onto land. It was right at the edge of our search. But between these tetrapods and ancient fish, there was still a gap spanning millions of years. If we could find an animal within that gap, we'd be filling in a crucial piece of evolutionary history.
All right. Now, there's no such thing as a quote unquote missing link, right? There are all these just transitional species. But look, could we? I asked my friend who's an expert in fossils. I said, hey, man, you know, what if I tried to find a fossil like this in Indiana? Okay, could I find a fish fossil? And he said, it's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely. Okay, and there's one reason why. Glaciers. The
Finally
glaciers
Right.
freaking like ruined it all for us. We can't, there's no dinosaur bones here because this giant block of ice came through and it just scraped everything away.